Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Frog in the throat. Today, we're going to be going over another one of the unique rings. This is one that's a little bit of a confused little ring, and I feel like you'll understand when we go over it. So first off, it has an implicit of 37.5% lightning resistance, but unlike normal rings, it doesn't have an implicit of a second resistance. Instead, it comes with 130 armor, which is actually not bad. It also has a really nice amount of increased maximum life on it. As you can see with mine, has a greater affix of 15% maximum life, which can definitely come in handy for when you're trying to stack as much maximum life as you possibly can. At current moment, unless they fix it, the viscous shield actually stacks incredibly well with maximum life because it is currently broken like crazy. And the more life you have, the more barrier you have, and the more barrier you have, the more multiplier you have. It's stupid. So 15% maximum life on a ring, it can be incredibly powerful for a viscous shield build. We also have a 98 to 125% increase in additive damage, which is not going to be really all that amazing, but it is a damage bonus when you gain resolve. So anytime you gain resolve, you're going to get a damage bonus for 4 seconds, which is not bad. You also get an 8 to 12.5% lucky hit chance while you have a barrier active. A lot of the times, these ones that are like, damage on Tuesdays kind of a thing, don't really show up on your tooltip, so you have to calculate those in manually. Like a lot of the times when you look at your lucky hit on your ability, if you add in lucky hit, like from any source pretty much, it's going to show up here and it's going to change the lucky hit percentage on the actual tooltip to represent it properly. However, damage on Tuesday style lucky hit bonuses don't usually show up on the tooltip, so this one might need to be calculated in manually. We also have the +3 to Auspicious, which Auspicious is one of the passives on the board. And I'm pretty sure Auspicious is the barrier one. Yes. So you accumulate 1% of your maximum life as barrier every second up to 10%. Taking damage prevents additional accumulation for 5 seconds. So if you were to potentially, let's pull some points just for a second and put some points into it, you can see that we get 1%, and then, let's pull another one, and now we're at 2% up to 20, and so forth and so on. So you can just continually keep raising that, and 3% up to 30. And then, of course, you're getting it from the ring as well, which means that the ring is going to be giving you a additional 3. It'll greater affix to 4 and could possibly go all the way up to, I would believe, around 8 is what it would probably cap out at. Which means that you're looking at, what is that, 8, 9, 10. So you would only need 2 points in the actual ability to reach the maximum value of 100% barrier, which is kind of nuts, especially when you consider it's 1%, every second up to 10%, right? So that means that if you get to 100%, it's 10% barrier every second up to 100%, and you could potentially bring that even higher, right? You could bring it up to at least 11 or maybe even 12 if you're using Shroud of False Death. So you're getting about 120% barrier, right? But you can't get 120% barrier. You can only get as up to your maximum life, but it would still gather faster because it would be 12% of your maximum life per second instead of 10. You get what I'm saying? So definitely a lot of additional barrier that you could potentially get there, which is interesting. And then on top of that, it also has a special effect. So the special effect is casting Evade consumes 1 stack of Resolve to generate 40 Vigor. So just another way that you can potentially get massive amounts of Vigor back. I tell you, the Spiritborn has a trillion, billion, million ways to get Vigor back. And that's equivalent to their damage right now, which is like a million. It's like a billion. They're currently doing like a billion damage, like with all the bugs and everything. And there's like a billion ways to get all your vigor back too. And this is just one of many. The only problem with this one is it does consume your resolve stacks, but there's plenty of ways that you could potentially get resolve stacks. And one of them is Armored Hide. So it also gives you the Armored Hide passive effect, which the Armored Hide passive effect is that you gain 1 resolve every 5 seconds. If you put more points into Armored Hide than what it actually states, so like for instance, if I just pull some points here and we just stack them into Armored Hide, you will see that at 5 it actually goes up to 2 resolve every 5 seconds. And if you stack it even higher than this, if you were get it to get it up to say 10, it would go up to 3 resolve every 5 seconds, because it does go up by 1 resolve every time you hit 5 ranks in the ability, which is pretty neat. So you're going to get like 3 resolve every second. So essentially, you can grab massive amounts of resolve through this. The only thing is that like you don't necessarily need Armored Hide on the bar to get this effect, because that's kind of how this entire thing works. Is it gives you the passive. You don't need it on the bar to gain the resolve, but most people are going to have it on the bar. I mean, as of right now, Armored Hide, I think, is one of the best defensive abilities, because not only does it grant you 100% block chance for 3 seconds, or even higher, depending on how high you bring the skill, but it also grants you a increase to your maximum resolve and your thorns, if you're using it for that reason. So you can basically get max resolve just by activating it. And then you also get block damage reduction by activating it as well, which are all very nice effects that you can potentially use. So a lot of people are putting this on their bar these days, and so having the passive effect doesn't really, like, it's not really that interesting, especially considering how good it is to actually have it on the bar. Unlike some of the others, like Toxic Skin, or if you're doing Thorns or stuff like that, you don't necessarily have to have it on the bar. But even then, Toxic Skin on the bar is absolutely amazing too. So like it's one of those things that, like, I think they thought it was going to be really cool to have the passive effect of Armored Hide, but then didn't realize how amazing Armored Hide actually was, and that everybody would want to actually use the ability. So it tends to not be as good as it seems. And that's kind of like the moral of the story with this ring, is it has a lot of effects on it that are pretty cool, but overshadowed by a lot of the other things.
Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
Now, I usually like to use these as a way to kind of like go over exactly what's wrong with the ring, and in a way kind of like talk about how they could potentially fix it. And I'd like to do that right now. Let's talk about how they could potentially fix this ring. First off, they designed the ring around vigor restoration. The problem with this is that, like, the Spiritborn has probably the most vigor restoration options, like, in the game. I've never seen a character that has more vigor restoration options than the Spiritborn. And the Spiritborn doesn't need another vigor restoration option. I hate to tell you this, Blizzard, but like, this is a terrible thing. It's awful. There's too many options already for vigor restoration on the Spiritborn, and this does not need to be one of them. I'm afraid you're going to have to overhaul that, to be perfectly honest. Number two is that Armored Hide is not really the most amazing passive. So Armored Hide passive effect is kind of bad, especially considering that the active effect is better, right? So because the active effect is so much better than the passive effect, you want it on your bar, right? You want it on your bar. The entire like idea behind this is that you're getting the passive effect of Armored Hide without needing to put it on your bar. So that way you can have the passive effect, you can have your cake, and you can eat it too. But nobody wants the passive effect of Armored Hide. We want the active effect of Armored Hide. We want the damage reduction. We want the block chance. We want the maximum resolve stacks instantly. We want all of the things that Armored Hide does on a active basis, not the stuff that it's doing passively. The stuff that it's doing passively is mediocre at best. All the stuff that it does actively is way better and much more impressive. Then to take this even further is the auspicious ability itself. So generating barrier. And I'm not going to say that the auspicious ability is bad, but let's take it from another standpoint, which is the same thing we said before. Spiritborn has a huge number of barrier options, okay? And unfortunately, auspicious is a low ranking one. The main problem with Auspicious is that it only works when you haven't been hit recently. So even though it can give you a relatively large amount of barrier, it does, however, require that you haven't taken damage in the past 5 seconds. Um, and the problem with this is that, like, you get hit a lot. Okay, so it doesn't work as well as a lot of the other builds. I mean, you could potentially put it together with, say, like a high dodge chance build and get a large amount of barrier coming in constantly. But as a general function of how barrier functions on this particular character, like, there are so many other better options. I could be using concussive stomp. I could be using the gorilla spirit hall choice. I could be using temerity. I could be using God. There's so many options. I could be using the Que rune with the earthen bulwark. And like there's really kind of like no limit to the various ways that I could potentially be getting access to barrier, including the protector, which is another interesting way to get access to the barrier, and he's actually pretty interesting to spam, easy to spam actually. So I can add the protector in here, and I don't even think I'm getting them all. I'm pretty sure there's some barrier here and there that I'm leaving out because I know there's more. Yes, there's barrier from soar. Like, let me throw that one in too. Like the soar boots give barrier, so soar boots. We can also add in barrier creation basically through any skill using the gorilla like Spirit Hall. We can also include Wuxie Nakpa, which Wuxie Nakpa allows us to gain access to the Gorilla Spirit Hall bonus without actually using the Gorilla Spirit Hall bonus by just simply spamming the Protector. So another way that you can potentially get barrier. And so what we're left with is that the item just doesn't really have like a lot of good usefulness. You don't really need the vigor that's being created by it. You don't really need the armored hide passive. The auspicious buff is the like least of all the barrier options that you have available to you. And then like the rest of the ring is mediocre at best. Like, yes, you get a little bit of lucky hit chance, but it's a conditional one based on having a barrier instead of just being a generic one. It gives you damage after you gain a resolve stack, which is kind of cool, I guess, but it's an additive bonus that's not really going to be all that amazing. If it was a multiplicative bonus, that could be a lot more interesting. Like maybe if it was like a 30 times multiplier after gaining a resolve stack, that could be like really powerful or something. Of course, that's going probably too far. About the only thing that this ring does that's actually really amazing is the 15% maximum life. That's about it. Hopefully, they do a revamp on this ring because I feel like it could be amazing if they fixed it. And how would I potentially fix it? Well, I'd probably make it so that you could get the active effect of Armored Hide, or I don't know, maybe if it amplified the effect of Armored Hide, or like I can't even really think of it off the top of my head because it's all over the place. Like I'm not really sure what you would focus on. It seems to be focusing on barrier because you get a lucky hit barrier, you get the auspicious which generates barrier, and you also get the armored hide which gives you resolve, and then gaining damage on resolve. It's just yeah. I don't. It's just too all over the place. I don't really know how to exactly put it. I'm assuming that the maximum life might actually be something that's supposed to feed into Viscous Shield, but Viscous Shield was never supposed to scale with maximum life. But at the same time, Barrier does scale with maximum life, so I guess that makes sense. So in the end of the at the end of the day, I suppose this is supposed to be a barrier ring. That's what this is supposed to be. So leave the maximum life. I guess you could leave the additive bonus for the gaining resolve, although it's not really super important. Auspicious seems like a bad play. I'm not really sure that's really the best option. Maybe you could turn this into something that modifies the auspicious passive. That could be very interesting. So instead of it gaining like 1% per second up to, like the whatever percentage, maybe you could make it so that it removes the the condition that you have to be like not hit within a certain period of time, and that way that it's constantly ticking no matter what, and that could be more interesting, right? So that could be more interesting. Make it so that you remove that 5 second delay if you get hit, and now we're cooking with some bacon grease, and people might actually want to throw this on with like a triple master worked auspicious, +8 to auspicious, so they're getting a huge amount of barrier coming in every second. That could be interesting. Um, as for the vigor part, I mean, casting evade consumes a stack of vigor to generate or resolve to generate vigor. I mean, flat vigor isn't really as amazing as like vigor generation or resource generation or like resource cost reduction or things that are a little bit more attractive in terms of like trying to maintain outputs. Even though you can have a very large number of evade stacks, you also don't have an infinite number of resolve stacks. And I understand that what they're trying to do with the armor hide passive effect is they're trying to give you essentially an infinite number of resolve stacks that you can use on your evades. But I guarantee you that even if you got this to 2 resolve stacks per 5 seconds, or even 3 resolve stacks per 5 seconds, I guarantee you I'm still burning through every single one of those before the next stack comes on, and that's kind of part of the issue here too, is that I don't really feel like the armored hide bonus is giving you enough resolve to compensate for consuming them, which means you're going to lose the resolve damage multiplier from the colossal glyph, which gives you 2% per resolve stack, because you're just going to be eating up all the resolve stacks like very fast with an evasion build and this item. And if you're using an evasion build, you don't really need vigor because you're probably just spamming an ability to get the storm feathers or something like that, which there's so much to talk about with this ring, and there's so much wrong with this ring that I really feel like it just needs like a complete overhaul and a fix to get it into a good place. Right now, it's pretty much just a barrier ring. Like that's all it's good for. You maybe like get a greater affix maximum life, a greater affix auspicious, and then you like triple masterwork the maximum life or the auspicious, one or the other, or maybe both, and then you get yourself massive amounts of life and massive amounts of barrier, and then you move on. But the main issue with Spiritborn right now is that she really doesn't have a lot of aspect slots. And I really doubt that most people even have room for this in their build, let alone do they actually want to use it, which is, yeah. Let's talk about where you can potentially find this real quick. So if we go to Diablo 4.life, we can pull up the panel for the Band of First Breath. And as you can see, it drops from Lord Zir. So if you're looking to farm this particular item, you can get it at Lord Zir. I don't think a lot of people are farming this item this season. I gotta be perfectly honest. I'd be interested to hear if anybody's actually even using it, to be perfectly honest. Even if you had a perfect one, 4 greater affixes with like the perfect on the effect of 40, I still don't think it's probably worth using. Yeah. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're talking about a poo-poo ring. Hopefully the developers spend some time and actually fix this one so that it's useful. And as always, keep watching.